Hello friends, welcome back. A little UFC recap. It's actually been a while. I've been slacking on the recaps, but we're here to do one. Unfortunately, UFC Edmonton, the event that we're going to be recapping, very low-key mids. It was actually, like in the thumbnail of this video, the fucking Canadian heist, a little payday mission. I thought there were some pretty brutal robberies. Funny enough, the commentary team was like, these aren't the worst robberies. This wasn't the worst robbery. It wasn't like a brutal robbery. Yet, I forget if it was last week or during the Fluffy versus Michel Pereira fight card that they were talking about one robbery and they wouldn't shut the fuck up about it. They would not shut the fuck up about it. But anyways, enough of that. We're about to hop pretty much straight into these fights. Did okay on the picks. Went 9-13 overall. We'll start off with first fight of the night. Early prelim opener, and it was the first robbery of the night. This was actually a fucking terrifying robbery, too. Jamie Lynn Horth versus Ivana Petrovic. Ivana Petrovic pleasantly surprised me. I thought she was winning the fight. I thought that she was low-key dominating. Not dominating, full straight up, but getting to dominant positions on the ground through either her own... Somehow this fucking... I'm kind of all over the place because this fight was spooky. First off, Jamie Lynn Horth looked like shit. She looked worse than her last performance. She looked slow as a motherfucker, sloppy, a little uncoordinated. Ivana looked okay. She wasn't throwing out the most, didn't have insane output, but I thought that she was landing the cleaner strikes, the better technique, the more impactful shots on the feet, and she had a lot of control time. Like, that was the thing. I know that Jamie Lynn Horth actually did have a submission attempt, I want to say, in round 2, like off rip, but that almost every grappling sequence that ended up going to the ground ended up with Petrovic in control. So it was crazy, man, because then, here we go. Fight goes to decision. I was actually already pretty certain that Jamie Lynn Horth lost. I didn't think it was close. I was like, all right, she lost. That's it. It is what it is. Ivana Petrovic surprised people. Until I heard the first scorecard of fucking 30-27, Jamie Lynn Horth. And then I was like, oh shit, they're robbing her. That was my first thought. Once I heard that, I was like, wait. Because 30-27 was crazy. The 29-28 robbery, like, I don't know what we should call it. That's like the gentleman's robbery. That's like, all right, we know what we did here. Everyone knows the deal. 30-27 is like, we don't give a fuck. That's more of like an and fuck you. Like, yeah, we're robbing you, and fuck you. Like, I don't know what the fuck was up with that. I forget the last judge that actually did decide that it was Horth who would be the victor of this bout, but I actually felt really bad for Petrovic. I think that was a fucking brutal robbery, actually. Especially for a chick that needs a win in her career, already not in favor of the fans, not necessarily in the good favor of the promotion. Like, you need a win like that. And she got it taken from her. Jamie Lynn Horth, Canadian. Maybe that has something to do with it. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Moving on. Cody Gibson versus Shannon Helliger. Fucking great fight. Great fight. Dudes went to war. Cody Gibson didn't really go to war, but Cody Gibson actually showed a lot of technical skill, a lot of control. Shannon Helliger actually was surviving his ass off against those arm triangle and other top-mounted submission attempts from Cody Gibson. He was actually scrambling, wall walking on the cage, like jumping off, bouncing off. He did a great job of surviving, but it was a very dominant performance from Cody Gibson. Very nice work. Shannon Helliger actually surprised me. I thought he was going to... I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, obviously, but I thought he was going to put up a little bit more of a fight. Excuse me, when I get close, just want to knock that out of the way, get a little bit more light. I thought it was going to be a lot closer of a fight than it actually was, ultimately. I thought Chad and Helliger would make things a little bit more competitive, but it wasn't like he just got his ass beat. He just decisively lost that fight. Moving on to what was the second robbery. Sergey City versus Garrett Armfield. I had Sergey in this one. And this was a hard pick for me because Garrett Armfield is low-key like one of my secret weapons. Like, ever since Brad Katona. I picked him to beat Brad Katona. He came through in valid fashion. He's come through. Actually, Garrett Armfield's low-key taking off in his own right. I think he did drop one of these fights, and I guess this will be the second one on paper. But I digress. Garrett Armfield looked fucking amazing, actually, against Sergey. Sergey had moments, too. Sergey was doing his thing. It was just, I thought that Garrett Armfield, simply put, had way more moments. He was winning more of the rounds. He was winning more of the fight. In fact, there's an argument that he won every single round. Like, there were close rounds. I want to say round 1 was close. Round 3 was also close, but it's real rough. It's rough, you know. I thought Garrett Armfield won that fight pretty handily, actually. I did think that Sergey actually thought that Garrett won that fight handily, too. Garrett, respect to him again, because he didn't even, like, go crazy or react insanely at the announcement of the decision. He did react visibly, but he didn't go crazy. He wasn't like, what the fuck? He was just like, just started shaking his head, turning around, you know, composing himself, walking away, and I respect that. Take it on the chin, you know, keep going. So ultimately, shit, the gang's rolling through. Ultimately, we started off 3-3 on the card. We had a great start to the card, actually. 2, we low-key should have been 1-2, but fuck it, man. We move on to was actually a pretty entertaining fight. I actually like this fight. Alexander Romanov versus Rodrigo Nascimento. I thought this was actually a pretty entertaining, pretty fun fight. Very nice. Alexander Romanov got it done, man. I was scared because Alexander Romanov, we've seen him look actually pretty good, both skill-wise and physically. And in this one, he was good enough skill-wise, and then physically it was very scary, though. There were moments where it looked like Romanov was gassing, and Nascimento seemed kind of fresh. But honestly, Alexander Romanov, he was ducking his head, and even though he kept on kind of only ducking his head as the head movement, it was pretty effective. Nascimento caught on, was trying to throw some uppercuts in there to touch him up, and he did eventually, but it wasn't anything too crazy. I thought Alexander Romanov won pretty handily, you know, grappled. He did what he had to do to win a very decisive decision. I enjoyed that fight, actually, funnily enough. Moving on. Crazy, crazy little scrap. This was fucking spooky hours, man, and the pick was looking good until it wasn't. Spooky hours being Youssef Zalal versus Jack Shore, man. I went with Jack Shore to win by decision. I thought that the striking was going to decide things, which ultimately it kind of did. But thought that the striking favored Jack Shore, and like I was saying, this might sound like a cope, but I honestly believe this. Jack Shore was doing his thing. I thought Jack Shore was winning the fight low-key, like, until he gets caught by a fucking, like, natural 20 knee. Like, not even like it was lucky. It was just literally perfect. It was a perfect, like, critical hit. Massive damage. Devastating damage. Funnily enough, Jack Shore fucking survived. He recovers from that. He does get tapped out by Youssef Zalal. It was a great finish. Fantastic fucking finish. Because Youssef was getting touched a little bit. He wasn't, like, getting his ass beat or anything. It was still a close fight. I just thought Jack Shore was kind of taking the fight to him and landing a little bit more. But fucking insane work from this man, Jack Shore, and Youssef Zalal. Youssef Zalal, man, that sub, he put it on so clean. It was done. It was done. Jack Shore looked good until he got caught. That knee fucked him up so bad. It was so perfect. Literally on the jaw, like snapped the jaw, the lower mandible. Shit was wild, actually. Quite nice, quite nice. Good work to Youssef Zalal. Moving on, Charles Jourdain versus Victor Henry. And that was, I believe, the first incorrect pick, the Jack Shore pick, and I was like, motherfucker. And then we actually went on a little bit of a skid because Charles Jourdain versus Victor Henry was up after that. And this was straight up, I was just simply, with all picks, you know, all incorrect picks, I am just simply wrong. But with this one, well and truly, I was simply wrong. I thought Victor Henry, despite the age, you know, I've seen what he can do. Charles Jourdain, like I said in the prediction video, this wasn't as much of the Victor Henry pick as this was a straight-up Charles Jourdain fade. I'll be honest, I'll admit it. I was fading Charles Jourdain heavy. I thought the drop down in a weight class to bantamweight was a desperation move. I didn't think that was valid. I didn't like that. You know, I thought he was on a skid. But to be fair, he looked great at 135. Looked very fast, very powerful. Looked a little drained, but I mean, that's expected. That's expected. So we'll have to see. Maybe he has a very successful run at 135. And he did get a bonus for that. Youssef Zalal also got a bonus. That's fair. I was saying Youssef Zalal should get a bonus for that because that was spooky hours. Oh, but it wasn't even that. We're coming up to real spooky hours in a bit. Moving on. Amin Zahabi versus Pedro Munoz. Great little bout. Great little scrap. You know, Pedro actually tanked pretty much everything that Amin had to throw at him, but Amin beat him. He pretty much just beat him decisively, as I think most people thought he would. Pedro Munoz was definitely there, you know. tried to fight back, but Eamon Zabi, especially in the last round, was throwing crazy extended combinations, just clipping up Pedro Munoz left and right, really. Moving on. Mike Malott versus Trevin Giles. Trevin Giles made it out of this one without getting finished this time. Mike Malott wins a decision pretty calmly. There were moments for kind of both dudes, I actually thought, because this wasn't as crazy of a fight as I think it should have been. But Mike Malott got it done. Very good for him. Honestly, I was expecting a little bit more of a dominant win. But that's just nitpicking crazy shit. Now, this is what I kind of wanted to get to because it was fucking terrifying. Dustin Stoltzfus versus Marc-Andre Barriault. I went with Power Bar. I went with this man, Marc-Andre, because even though I've picked against Marc-Andre multiple times, he's a decent fighter. He actually is a pretty good fighter. Pretty powerful, very competent striker. And even though he's not the best grappler, he does have good... He's had good grappling experience with people a lot better than him. Like, you know, Fluffy Hernandez, multiple people. But I thought that the striking... And another thing that I was relying on is his chin. Marc-Andre has a chin. He does get cracked. He gets rocked. He takes a fuck ton of damage, but he does have a chin. I think his chin got cracked. I think we watched it get cracked by Dustin Stoltzfus live, unfortunately. Unfucking-fortunately. The fight towards the end of the first round just comes down to a crazy sequence. Both dudes are hurting each other back and forth. Fucking Marc-Andre Barriault initiates just an all-out slugfest, the straight-up shootout. Dustin Stoltzfus comes out on top with a couple of sneaky hooks that went right under the fucking arms of Barriault and clipped his chin across and put him out, eyes open. It was a beautiful, beautiful fucking finish. It was war, actually. No, that shit actually made me change the way I think about Dustin Stoltzfus because that was a really good finish, a really good performance. He looked good, too. He looked good. Looked very good, very good. And he was a nice little dog in that fight. So let's see. We were 6-3 at that point, I believe, in the picks. You know, I was like, fuck, it's kind of spooky. Moving on, though. I was looking forward to this shit. I called it by decision initially, but Jasmine Jasudavicius, one of my favorite female fighters out there right now, for real. I've been following her for a minute. If you've been watching the channel, she is like a fucking pillar of this channel. I pretty much emotionally pick her sometimes, but I actually have a lot of faith in her. She's very skilled, very tough, knows what to do, and she's with it to hang in there until the end. This was a good fight. Jasmine Jasudavicius versus Ariane Lipski da Silva. Ariane Lipski, a.k.a. Ariane da Silva. I guess it's Ariane Lipski da Silva now. The third variation. But this was a pretty good fight. Unfortunately, what I was scared about, it being Ariane Lipski being the better striker and possibly touching up Jasmine, that was happening. That was happening in the first round. It was kind of fucking scary. I was just waiting for the takedowns. Once Jasmine got the takedowns and she was working things, then I was like, all right, let's go. And then she got in that little Darce choke, and it was brutal. It was brutal. Spooky fucking hours. Absolutely phenomenal finish from Jasmine. She got a bonus for that. And that was good, too. As long as fights stay on the feet for Ariane, it's quite nice. But Jasmine, man, Jasmine's a problem, man. Jasmine, she beats a lot of girls, I think, actually. I even backed her against Tracy Cortez. I thought she was going to get that one, too. We might need that rematch, actually, soon, relatively. I'm not going to lie. Moving on to what was, again, like, low-key a great fucking fight. A great fight for what I think it meant to the two fighters participating in it. That fight being Brenson Ribeiro versus Kyle Machado. I was terrified about this fight before I even saw the weigh-ins. Because I went with Brenson Ribeiro. This was the third pick. If you watch the prediction videos, this is the third time. Third time's the charm for Brenson Ribeiro. The Brenson Ribeiro pick. First two times, it wasn't good. The first time was when I was the most confident in him, actually, against this dude, Mingying Zhang, I believe his name was. He drops Mingying Zhang, hurts him, and then fucking gets knocked the fuck out by Mingying Zhang. Loses his next fight against Gadzi Sulov. I forget the dude's first name, but this man needed a win. He needed a win in the UFC. There was a possibility that he was going to get brutally finished because when Kyle Machado came into the weigh-ins, he looked like a different fucking man in the best way possible. But he didn't fight like a different man. That was the really good thing. Brenton Hibero actually showed us, the chin held up a little bit. He wasn't getting clipped. Kyle was fighting like a wild goofy, not even like a wild man. Like, he looks like a wild man, but he's really a goofy. Brenton Hibero got it done, man. It was fucking great to see. It was actually just great to see. Like, and that was a close one. That was a close one. Very close fight by some Brenton Hibero. And you could see the emotion unload from Brenton Hibero as soon as the fight was over. My son was crying, dropped to his knees, like, ah. It was good to see, actually. I'm very happy for Brenton. Very happy that he got that one. But Cal Machado, looking forward to his next fight as well. Brenton Hibero, that was a funny win in the sense that win might not get rewarded in typical fashion. They might serve Brenton Hibero up to someone to get brutally finished. I don't know. Moving on to the co-main event, the last robbery of the night. I thought it was a robbery. I haven't rewatched any of these fights, so I don't know. But I don't know for certain, I'll say. I felt like this was a fucking robbery, though. Erin Blanchfield versus Rose Namajunas. Now, Erin Blanchfield 100% rallied. She 100% rallied. She started winning rounds. I thought she won rounds 3 and possibly round 5, actually. I might be misremembering this slightly, but the first 2 rounds, I thought Rose won. And round 4, I thought Rose won. Or it was one of the later rounds that I thought Rose had also won. I didn't think that it was just fucking crazy. It was fucking crazy, man. I kind of get it, Rose, despite her name value, is getting a little bit long in the tooth, has been fighting a while. Erin Blanchfield, the new blood. Not saying that's the reason at all, but ultimately Erin Blanchfield was struggling for most of the fight to work takedowns, to work the grappling, to even get in and land strikes on Rose at first. Eventually she did start breaking down the distance, ending up on top, and Rose would occasionally get up, would sometimes have to take the position. It wasn't too crazy. I'm trying to remember. I think there was actually a low-key spooky like submission attempt or something at one point. Maybe not. Might be misremembering that with the previous fight, but it was a decent fight. If you were watching the stream, I was falling asleep at this time, but that was just because like I was exhausted, 1. And 2, these fights, especially the later ones, this card felt so long. It was almost 7 hours long, but and for 13 fights, it was initially slated to be 14. The Derek Lewis Jonathan Deniz fight canceled at the last moment, but 13 fights is still already decent enough. That's pretty decent. It just felt long as a motherfucker. There were a decent amount of decisions too, but there were some finishes as well, some early finishes. I'd prefer with the early finishes that they just keep the fights going, maybe take a 3-minute break instead of a 1-minute break or whatever the fuck. I get that the UFC probably has like time slots for ads or whatever the hell, their sponsorships, whatever that may be, but as a viewer, I just get exhausted. I'm tired. I'm watching the same fucking ad 50 times. I'm watching a fucking eagle or a hawk steal someone's phone and then they drive in their car to go find the nest of phones. I'm watching let's see, what else are we watching? I'm watching fucking Kevin Holland and Wonderboy talk about their damn after party and that Jose Cuervo bullshit. Like, it makes me sick, man. Or we're listening to fucking Talking Heads. The Talking Heads, probably the least offensive to me. The ads, extremely offensive. I'm done with that shit. And also, something to note, this is a personal complaint, but at UFC Edmonton, the fucking UFC, not the Fight Pass, the ESPN shit, the official shit that you pay the UFC for, that you don't have to use streams, essentially. You know what I'm saying about when I say that. That shit was fucked up all night long. All night long. Like, what the fuck are we paying for? Audio fucked up. Stream crashing. The actual shit crashing. Like, if I pay, right? So I'm not using the illegal streaming services that Dana White fucking hates. If I have to refresh that motherfucker even one time, it's not worth it. It's lost all of its value. Like, there's no single fucking reason. The only reason why people eventually get that shit is so they can watch the fights uninterrupted without it being nuked. It's getting fucking nuked somehow, man. It didn't make sense. Granted, that's the first time I've ever had problems with it. But I digress. Moving on to the main event. Brandon Moreno versus Amir Albazi. Great fight, man. It went pretty much how I thought it was going to. A little bit of the Tatsuro Taira versus Brendan Royval, a little bit of a veteran whooping. Even though Amir Albazi, by his record, he is a veteran fighter. Brandon Moreno, former multiple-time champion, though. That's what we're talking about here. Brandon Moreno was piecing up Amir Albazi on the feet. Piecing him up. Decisively won. I thought he won every single round, but one judge, I think, gave one round to Amir Albazi. It was a pretty dominant performance. Amir Albazi didn't give out, you know. He looked very good. Looked like he was off the sauce, everything. But Brandon Moreno is actually him. He's actually fucking nice. He was piecing up Amir Albazi. He was styling on him at points. A little bit of showmanship, a little bit of faces, a little bit of movement. You know, like it was nice. It was nice to watch. Very pleasant. Did it make up for what we were forced to sit through beforehand? Not necessarily. And I don't mean the co-main when I say that. I just mean the entire night of fights. Not necessarily. It was a pretty mids night of fights. It wasn't the worst. Not the best, though. But the main event was pretty good. Brandon Moreno, I thought, beat Amir Albazi's ass. So did the judges. So did everyone else, ideally. Pretty simple. Pretty quick recap, I think. Hopefully this isn't a crazy long recap. Probably it's still in the normal 25 to 30 minute range, but let's see. Any announcements? Shit. We're getting close to 100 subscribers, and the 50 sub special isn't even fucking out yet. Yeah, that shit's going to be worked on for a while. Unfortunately, I haven't decided this. Might have to start it over from the beginning, and here's why. I went too crazy with the placement of a lot of movies, because ultimately, what is an iceberg chart, right? It's about popularity and obscurity, like on the other side of that coin. You know, it's not about the the context or, the content of the film, you know? Something could be extremely outlandish, avant-garde, experimental, alternative. Something else could be extremely orthodox and traditional. But it's just about their levels of obscurity, like how popular are the movies themselves, and that's where they get ranked. And that's ultimately what I fucked up on. I put a lot of really popular movies, not really popular, but popular martial arts movies, we'll say, in like the lower, more obscure tiers with films that actually are obscure, films that people really haven't seen. Some films that are up higher, that I put higher up, are actually a lot more niche and obscure than I realized. So it's really that. I really just have to go back, re-edit the list itself, the iceberg chart itself, which is pretty much complete. Eventually, now and again, I'll add a new movie to it that I come across, but that's pretty much complete. I had about an hour and 5-10 minutes of this shit recorded, which is pretty much the first 2 tiers of the iceberg. Most of that shit I think will still be able to be used, but it's just hard. I really have to see if I have to move films up and take films out of the top tiers. It's rough. It's hard because I'm thinking about these films, if they're popular as martial arts films, about their popularity in general. But I'm rambling on now about that. That's the update with that. What I wanted to also get into is for the 100 subscriber special, because we're almost at 100 subscribers. It's going to be something very spooky. Not film nor MMA related. It's going to be athletics related, actually, kind of fitness related. It's going to be a wild challenge, a Herculean challenge. I challenge you to do it. I'm going to be breaking a world record. Actually setting a world record to be exact. But I've said enough. That'll come at 100 subscribers. And that one will be a lot. It's funny, I'm going to say that's going to be a lot easier to do than the 50 subscriber special, because they're hard in their own rights. But this is a lot more of a Herculean physical feat. Let's see. Any other announcements? Picks coming maybe today. Today is in Monday. Maybe tomorrow, Tuesday. I think that's it. I think I'll let you go and enjoy your beautiful Monday. A little bit of an overcast day here in New York City, but not too bad. Weather's still warm. I think that's really it. I'll let you guys go. Subscribe if you want to see more content. Like the video if you like the video. Dislike the video if you dislike the video, though. Let me know why, though, however. Leave your thoughts. Anything you want to ask me, any comments, just say bubble guts, say back shots, whatever the hell you want in the comments. Always love reading comments. And getting back to people. Thanks for watching. As always, much love. Big kiss.